Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Soccer Coaches. I am Baxter Colburn, joined alongside me by the man Simon Mitchell, the man that everybody knows is by far the best-looking man. He's just a very good-looking man, and it's an honor and a privilege to do a show with him. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you, Simon. How are you, sir?
Hey, buddy. Oh, what a lovely compliment. I can't say I look as good as Jose Mourinho, but I feel a lot better than he does.
I've never seen you in a suit, so I can neither confirm nor deny that statement.
I don't think you'll ever see me in a suit unless somebody's getting married, and you and I are both married, so you'll never see me in a suit.
Perfect, and your girls are far too young to even think about marriage or boys, so we've got a long ways before we see old Pappy Simon there in a suit, I'm sure.
Long, long way to go.
Especially if you have your say, right?
Even longer.
I love it. Well, hopefully you do not have to wait very long to listen to us, because we are going to be actually fairly consistent now for the month of September. We've got some shows coming out here for you. Obviously, the international break is going on right now, so we thought about going to Europe and doing something exciting and pretend to be all important, but it's not even worth it because our clubs don't pay us enough. So, regardless of that, we want to remind all of you, though, that you can listen to this show right here on Fridays on the Sports Podcasting Network, and then, of course, on demand on iTunes and on Spreaker.com as well.
Yeah, and you can also catch us up on social media. We are the Fantasy Soccer Coaches on Facebook. You can also email us if you want to send us a long rambling letter, tfsoccercoaches@gmail.com. Or if you just want to have a bit of a whinge, you can go to @tfsoccercoaches on Twitter. Or if you want to send my beautiful colleague Baxter some praise, it's @Baxter Colburn. Or if you just want to pick on me, it's @Mitch the Coach.
See, I feel like the American in me wants to raise my hand and say, what's a whinge?
A whinge, it's a moan, it's a whine, it's having a little bit of a complaint about something that's not really anything to complain about. It's like saying, I like David Luiz, I just don't like his hair.
One of those things. Okay, well, that's good to know. I've already learned something 2 minutes into the show today. Well, we are thrilled to be here with you guys this week. Coming up in our second segment, one of our Premier League correspondents, Brett Schommer, will be here with us to hopefully just get a lock on what happened on the Premier League transfer deadline day. I still haven't fully sorted through it, Simon. I don't even know if you've even fully sorted through it either. There was transfers left and right. I'm pretty sure I got sold to China and then back to the Premier League, and now I'm in Australia. I don't even know where I'm supposed to be playing anymore.
It's absolutely crazy. It really, really was. I started picking up on deadline day at about 8 o'clock in the morning UK time, and in and out of work, I do a lot of driving, so I drove down to London, and in the car we had the local radio, TalkSport was on, and they were talking about everything that was happening, and it kept on going on and on and on and on, and I went to bed at about 11:15, and the deadline day window closed, and when I went to bed I was thinking, oh well, Tottenham have had a bad day. We didn't get Sissoko. He's stuck on the M6 somewhere near Birmingham in between Tottenham and Everton.
Yep.
And I woke up to find Moussa Sissoko has signed for Tottenham for £30 million.
Hey, and as a Tottenham fan, how do you feel about that?
I'm very pleased. There's a lot of Tottenham fans that aren't. I think he's a good stand-in for Moussa Dembele. He's a powerful, forward-thinking midfielder, which is somebody, when Dembele's been out suspended for the first 4 games this season, we've not had. Played very well for France, but at the same time, hasn't been that great for Newcastle in the Premier League last season. But fingers crossed, Pochettino might get a tune out of him and we can have a bit of the good Sissoko rather than the bad Sissoko.
No, I can understand that. Yeah, and I remember Sissoko a little bit. Newcastle actually played a friendly in my city here in Milwaukee last summer, so I got an opportunity to check him out a little bit, and it was very interesting to see him play. A very powerful player as well, too. So I think someone that will likely bring a little bit of stability and excitement to that Tottenham midfield for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but I think we're going to talk a little bit more about the deadline day signings when we have a special guest on in a little while.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So aside from that, let's take a look at everything else fantasy-related for our teams, Simon. I'm going to continue to boycott the Dream Team and the Telegraph because they don't like me, maybe because I'm American or I sit during the national anthem. I don't know what it is, but they don't like me for some reason. So I don't know how I'm doing in those leagues. How are you doing in those leagues?
Well, in the Sun team, in the Sun Dream Team league that we have, I'm currently top by 10 points. In fact, I'm
Look at that.
Quite pleased. Made a couple of transfers this last week before just before the last round of games, game week 3. I brought in Robert Snodgrass from Hull
Robbie.
City. I also brought in Johnny Evans as well into the centre of defence.
So you've done a little bit of shifting around because last time I talked to you, you were like, Snodgrass, he was good, but I can see that you finally did pull the trigger on him because you realized that by me drafting him in the Fantrax League, you realized just how smart of a play that was, and you're like, he must be on my team.
Well, I took a risk. I brought in a player. I kind of shuffled around my team when we did this show where I announced who I'd actually selected. Shuffled around the team in the Sun a bit, and I brought in Emiliano Nsue, who was 0.5 million Middlesbrough player, only because he scored a lot of goals. However, Middlesbrough have got him playing in defence, so I needed a cheap midfielder to bring into the lineup. Snodgrass had already scored a goal in the league, so I brought him in. He then went and scored a goal in the EFL, or the League Cup as it used to be called. So again, he scored me a few points, so I'm quite pleased with him.
Well, and that's what you want, though, I think, at the end of the day. You want to have players in your team that, sometimes it's not always going to be those big names. And I think that's one common misconception about fantasy. I mean, I've got Eden Hazard on my Fantrax team, but he's not dropping 10 to 20 points consistently every week. That's not how it works. That's just not the realistic nature of how fantasy sports work. So, I mean, a good example for me is in the PremierLeague.com league. I mean, I've scored not as many points as I want to, but this last week my whole team scored 48 points, which was third best out of the 6 teams, and I'm still on the bottom of the table. So I'm still trying to pick myself up in the Premier League table a little bit more. Fantrax, I'm doing better. I think I'm in 5th place out of, was it 12 teams we have in our league? Something like that. So I'm 2-1-0 in that league. So fantasy is such a fickle thing. Don't ever throw the towel in after 5 or 6 games and say, I'm done, I'm garbage, I'm complete crap. That's just not how it works. You got to give it time to develop and form a relationship. Kind of like, before you find that right person to marry, you got to get to know them, take them to dinner, meet the parents, and then you can kind of go from there, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you've got a couple of things you can do. I mean, you've always got transfers in the PremierLeague.com, the Sun, the Telegraph, but you're limited to the transfers you can do. PremierLeague.com will let you do unlimited transfers, but they start taking points off you if you do more than one a week.
I've noticed that.
Fantrax is a slightly different kettle of fish because we've got a guy. We'll probably speak to him later, who is almost streaming. For those of you who play fantasy baseball, you're dropping, you're bringing in, you're dropping, you're bringing in, you're looking at your weekly matchups, and you're going, right, well, there's no point in me having the Bournemouth defence because they're playing Chelsea away. I'll tell you what I'll do, I'm going to stack Chelsea midfielders and defenders, whoever's available, I'm going to bring them in. Then once they've had their bad week, you then drop them. You've got to look at players that have been dropped just after the transfer window. Wanyama's been dropped from Tottenham, Llorente's been dropped, Fernandez at Swansea's been dropped, Berahino's also been dropped, Zaha, Benikafobie, Jesse Lingard. Lots of players have been dropped and replaced by players that have moved around. And again, we'll talk about some of the deadline day players later. Jack Wilshere's been picked up. Wilfred Bonney's been picked up. Who else has gone? Look, Remy has been picked up. Kelechi Iheanacho's been picked up. So there's players out there, especially in draft leagues, where there's always going to be somebody available to collect. But going back to the Fantasy Premier League, I'd like to point out that despite the fact that you're currently bottom, I am top in that one as well.
Mm-hmm. Just rubbing that in a little bit more. I know. I appreciate that. But I am better than you right now in Fantrax, though.
You are doing better on Fantrax, but I am doing better than you in the PremierLeague.com. But that's only, again, because this one it's a weekly lineups league, so you've got to set your lineup. And if you forget, you can miss out on points. Now, just a little word of warning. Looks like Sergio Aguero is going to get a ban for an elbow during the West Ham game last weekend. He gets that ban, he's going to be out for 1-2 games, possibly even 3 for dangerous play. He's currently, as I look at my team, he's the captain of my team. I'm going to drop him out as we speak. I'm going to put him onto my bench, and I'm going to bring in, I think I'm going to bring in Joe Allen, because the other guys on my bench, Fosu Mensah at Manchester United isn't getting a look in, and Højbjerg at Southampton, they've got Arsenal away. So I think Joe Allen, playing Tottenham Hotspur at Stoke at home, is probably the best bet. However, I have a transfer. I could look at doing a transfer. But again, for the sort of money that I could drop Aguero for, I could bring in somebody huge. I could bring in one of the better players to play for 1 week, drop them, bring him back in again. It swings and roundabouts. You can play like that, but you need to invest an awful lot of time doing it.
Exactly, and that's the hard part about it too, is figuring out the mathematics. I mean, like I said, I'm only able to play in the PremierLeague.com one and on Fantrax, so finding that balance for Fantrax, while we were even talking, I picked up and dropped a player while we were talking. It's just that easy. It's instantaneous. But for the Premier League, you almost have to draw up a flow chart, basically, to say, all right, I've got one transfer. Who the heck am I going to do? What position can I get away with if I've got two players out or something? There, things of that nature. So, looking at my bench in Premier League, I've got John Stones, Cathcart, and Barini, all who have yet to really do anything for me this year. But at the same time, I'm probably going to have to get rid of them all at some point. But I have to focus on my starting 11 right now as well too, and figuring out that one transfer to properly make that right choice overall.
Yeah, you do. I'm just taking a look now at the possibility of dropping Aguero. If I drop him for 1 week, I could bring in somebody in attack like Ibrahimovic, but then looking at Ibrahimovic, Manchester United are playing Manchester City.
It's true.
Will he score? It probably will, but it's a much more difficult look. Whereas if you look at somebody like Diego Costa is got a slightly easier easier challenge this week.
Yeah.
So you've got to look at who has he got this week? Let's just take a little look. He's playing Swansea City.
That would make sense. That's why Thibaut Courtois is my starting goalkeeper this week in PremierLeague.com over Tom Heaton.
Well, yes. Again, if you look at the PremierLeague.com, though, if you click on the player, you actually have something called the FDR. And that's not one of your former presidents. It's actually the fixture difficulty ranking.
Yep.
So Swansea are ranked at a number 2. Number 1 is the easiest fixture. Number 5 is the hardest. So if you look who Diego Costa could have, he's got Swansea, Liverpool, then Arsenal, Hull, Leicester and Man United. So he's kind of got a bit of a tougher run coming up.
Yep.
Whereas if we go to Sergio Aguero, let's just bring him up. If I can, I can't bring up Sergio Aguero. It's asking me to... There we go. Fixtures. He has Man United, then he's got Bournemouth, Swansea, Spurs, Everton and Southampton. So if you look at the next 3 or 4 games, you could probably drop Aguero for the 3 games he'll be suspended, and then try and find a striker that's got easier matchups, perhaps. Ibrahimovic, we all know that Ibrahimovic has got Manchester City this weekend. Then they've got Watford, Leicester and Stoke. So Ibrahimovic has chances to score. Maybe even Jermaine Defoe. We talk about Jermaine Defoe in the past. He's got Everton, Spurs, Palace, West Brom.
Yeah, he scored a goal again this last week.
One more striker just for you, Negredo.
Yeah.
Palace, Everton, Spurs, West Ham and Watford. So Negredo's probably got the easier run for the next 3 or 4 games than all of the other top-scoring strikers so far. So do you drop Aguero thinking he's going to get suspended and bring in Negredo?
I think you do at this point. With the possibility of the 3-game suspension for Aguero, most of the time when we hear the rumors of suspensions like this, 99% of the time they go through. And it's for 3 games, as we mentioned. 3 or 4 games, a little stretch here and there. It's okay to stream a player. It's okay to bring somebody else in to just kind of cover you. And why not bring a guy like Negredo in who's been scoring goals and is going to have at least 25 by Christmas break as well? It makes complete sense to me.
15. You said 15. I don't even think
that's what I'm saying.
You
mean 15 is totally fine, but I'm saying he's going to have 25 by that point.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see.
I love it. All right, I do want to ask your opinion, Simon, about the Manchester Darby, because there's so many stars that are going to be on the field during that game. Who do we even bother playing if you're a fantasy owner? Zlatan seems like an easy choice, but aside from that, though, we already know Pogba is just a good distributor. We know that David De Gea is a good goalkeeper. We knew Claudio Bravo is the new goalkeeper. Kevin De Bruyne. The list can go on and on and on, obviously, of players to pick and choose from. But at the end of the day, are there maybe those couple of players for each team that are almost, I know it's hard to guarantee, but guarantee points?
Well, you could look at it from a couple of points of view. Both teams, Man United and Manchester City, they have both pretty much fielded the same starting 11 for every game so far this season. Manchester United certainly have. So you can expect Man United to field De Gea in goal. Valencia, Luke Shaw, Daley Blind, Eric Bailey. Maybe he might change out his central midfield, but Fellaini seems to be stuck in there. Mkhitaryan made a bit of an impact when he came on against Hull, so he might get a look in. However, he was injured playing for the national team. I think he's Armenian in the week, so there's a chance he might not even play. But you know that Rooney will be in there. You know that Ibrahimovic will be in there. So there are the ones that will guarantee you game time. Perhaps the forwards, if you just want to pick up cheap points, are there. Man City, slightly different. Again, they've fielded Otamendi, Stones. Bravo will come into goal. Perhaps Caballero's not actually had a bad go of it so far. So it's really dependent on what you're looking for. And again, it could be a huge risk. It could be a 5-5. It could be a 4. It could be a 0-0. So you want to stack defenders and goalkeepers.
Exactly, and that's the hard part about it with this derby. This is either like a crazy unlimited goals, or it's a 0-0 draw, and everyone's like, well, that was a waste of 90 minutes. What the heck?
Well, I'm just taking a quick look now. Where's it been played? Do we know? Is it at Manchester United?
I should know this.
I'm just having a quick look. I was just wondering where it was.
Man City.
It's at Manchester. It's at Old Trafford. So the last game at Old Trafford between these two clubs in the league was 0-0.
Yeah.
Before that, it was 4-2. Then 3-0 to City, then 2-1 to City, then 6-1 to City, then 2-1, 4-3. So it hasn't got a history of being a tight 0-0.
True.
There will be goals. It's just who's going to get them. So Ibrahimovic is on form. Young Iheanacho will probably start instead of Aguero, perhaps up front. Sterling may even start up front, they have been talking about. So there are options. I would say Sterling. I would say Ibrahimovic. I would say Rooney, because he's got a history of scoring in Manchester Darbies. But then I'd also look at the defensive point of view, perhaps looking at Bailey, Shaw, Stones. I mean, Shaw and Stones are dead cheap in the sun. So again, if you want to make a quick change, make it now. Exactly,
I agree with you. One final thing that I think is kind of funny. You talked about that FDR rating. If you look at it, if you have a Man City player playing Man United, that FDR rating is a 5. But if you have a Man United player playing a City player, it's only a 4. So that's interesting. Even though both of those teams are top right now, United apparently is the harder of the two opponents, which is just kind of funny. So.
I think it's because they're at home as well, because you're playing at Old Trafford. So I think with the reverse fixture would probably fix it around.
I'd agree with
that.
But
again, lots of factors.
I agree. All right, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, our Premier League correspondent, Brett Schommer, will be here. Stick with us. You're listening to the Fantasy Soccer Coaches. Back after this. It's the Fantasy Soccer Coaches rolling right along. I am Baxter Colburn, joined alongside by Simon Mitchell, the man that I believe looks like a younger version of the guy from Up, but that's just me. Anyway, Simon, how we doing, sir? Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, we're rolling along nicely.
Yeah, yes, we are. We had a great discussion in the first segment all around the craziness going on in our fantasy league. Simon boasted about how he's in first place in every league except for the one that matters, which is our Fantrax league. And we took a little bit of a look at the Manchester Darby as well, just to kind of figure out players you may and may not want to talk about or to possibly start in your lineup as well. Last week, you'll remember, for those that listened, we had one of our Manchester United correspondents, Marcelo Taborga, with us. Now we're going to jump to one of our Premier League correspondents. This week, we're going to bring in Brett Schommer. He had the opportunity to spend every single Manchester United game last year, actually at Old Trafford. Even though he does live here in the States, he was over abroad for a year, lived in Dublin, flew to the games, and now he's here with us on the program. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you, Brett. Thanks for being on the show today.
Good morning. Good to see you. Sitting down, waiting for what should be a weekend of Premier League football, but of course, friendlies in the lot here, so...
Yeah, I know. That's we were talking about that in the first segment too. We were like, "Oh, wait, it's international break. Shoot!" But international break does provide fantasy owners though with an opportunity to kind of restart and check up their lineups a little bit and kind of get into a better place in that regards as well too. So Brett, the big thing we want to talk about with you today, of course, is all the insanity that took place with transfer deadline day. A lot of those huge deals taking place. David Luiz coming back from PSG to Chelsea. We talked about it in the first segment. Musa Sissoko coming from Newcastle to Tottenham. The list kind of goes on and on too. But as you were watching deadline day develop, can you just kind of give us some of the emotions and thoughts you were kind of seeing throughout the day?
Sure. I was quite busy switching players. I don't know if you have the emails on Fantrax. I was dropping and adding players all day. A few players I'm not sold on Sissoko at all. He wasn't consistent for Newcastle, looked disinterested for them at times. Obviously, he was turned on in France and was really playing well. The big moves I thought were Bournemouth picking up Wilshere and Stoke getting Boney. I think those are the two biggest moves for clubs, especially of their size, to getting players of that quality. And of course, I snapped them up immediately as soon as their transfers were confirmed.
Well, that's one thing too. I was curious about is Jack Wilshere, because he struggled at Arsenal. I feel like for a while, being at a club like Bournemouth, is he going to be a more central part of that build up play and that attacking now? Is he going to be an actual fantasy help instead of a hindrance?
Well, obviously, I think so. If I picked him up, Bournemouth is a good footballing playing side. They play a similar enough style to Arsenal as much as you can when you go. No offense to Bournemouth, but down the rungs of the ladder that much. Mm-hmm. And he'll be guaranteed game time there. So I think it's a good move for him. It makes sense, especially on a loan for both parties, because free for Bournemouth essentially free for Bournemouth. And Wilshere just needed a move to kind of restart his career.
Well, it's not totally free for Bournemouth, because we're hearing over here that they've paid £2 million to loan him for the season. And the fact that they've paid that money and he gets himself injured, which he has a habit of doing, you can't quite say. But the one thing about Wilshere is, being a Tottenham fan, he's probably the most hated footballer out there for us. He is a quality footballer. There's absolutely no denying it. But he seems to have been another one of these enigmas, these English players that's like, oh, he's the next Iniesta. He could do this. And he's just not really kicked on and done it. It is injuries. But again, I think it's just down to attitude. I personally would have loved to have seen him go to Roma or AC Milan. Yeah. I think it would have done so much better for him. So it would have done him the world of good. But the fact that he's gone to Bournemouth kind of goes to show that he'd rather stay where his friends are, stay close to London, be near his family. Hopefully it'll be the making of him. So from an international perspective, I hope it works out. But from a club perspective, I hope he has another broken ankle.
I don't disagree with anything there. So,
even the broken ankle part too. I love it. Yeah, well, I mean it's
maybe a little far, but like Joe Hart moving abroad. Yeah, I thought was a good move for him. Getting out of the limelight, we won't scrutinize every mistake. Could be the same for Wilshere, but I mean, you can kind of disappear in Bournemouth a bit.
I went to Bournemouth on holiday last year, and there's nowhere to disappear unless you take a zip wire from the pier to the beach. But just as we were talking about Joe Hart going to Torino, I think that's a brilliant signing for Torino, but it's a big loss for the Premier League. He's a very expensive player. He's leaving a big, expensive hole in a lot of teams. The Sun, he's worth £5.5 million, the same as the Telegraph and the Fantasy Premier League. So Joe Hart's in your team. Who do you swap him out with then, Brett? Who would be your number one top keeper to put in his place?
I tried to pick up Bravo. Apparently I was too late to the waiver wire there.
Sorry.
But
Did you have Joe Hart in the draft league?
No, I did not. I had Jack Butland, who got hurt immediately, and I have Michel Vorm for the time being.
See, that was similar to what happened to me too, Brett.
To talk about keepers.
Yeah.
It's almost, unless you keep a clean sheet, you're losing points in our Fantrax league.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't know what league manager thought that was a good idea.
I'm considering just picking up a keeper that will not play in the slightest and just taking a 0.
That honestly might be your smarter play at this point. Like I said, I don't know who thought. Maybe I think our league manager might be a little corrupt or got paid off by somebody.
Never. No. What the thing with goalkeepers is, my argument has always been, and that's the reason why I set the scoring as I did in that league, was purely based on the fact that everyone I think we drafted goalkeepers in the first round, and clearly nobody looked at the actual scoring potential of a goalkeeper.
12th or so round to grab Butland.
Yeah, I picked up Peter Cech quite late on, but we had goalkeepers getting drafted. I'm just having David De Gea went in round 3.
Jeez.
So you can see how early Lloris went in round 2. So goalkeepers were drafted very, very early on, and there's me thinking, what are you doing? I picked up Peter Cech in round 5. Which I thought was fair enough, because if he keeps 20 clean sheets and he concedes 20 goals, he's still going to score me, 80 points over the course of a season.
I suppose, if in your weird, twisted Tottenham thinking ways, I guess that makes sense. Anyway,
so let's move off the goalkeepers. You've mentioned Wilfred Bonney going to Stoke. I think that's a brilliant move for Bonney. I think it's a brilliant move for Stoke. They've only got 1 point from 3 games so far. Their strikers are either 8 foot tall or 40 years old, so great signing for them.
Or both.
I was going to say, or both. If you're, I was going to say, if you're crouched there, you're both of those. Yeah.
But Wilfred Bonney, good signing.
Agreed. I think moving away from City needed to happen as well. He does have a bit of the big fish, little pond syndrome that he had with Swansea. I think that'll return at Stoke, and he will be the main man there.
Which I think will be good for his career, too.
They've got some wingers to run off him. I think it could be a great move.
If you want him on a bargain, PremierLeague.com, he's 7.3 million because he hasn't played this season, so his price has dropped a little bit. So he's definitely worth a cheap pickup. However, Andre Gray is still only 6.5. So still take Andre Gray.
Get him. Why not? At this point, what do you have to lose, right?
Because Simon sells them every single week, and at this point, it's kind of a stubborn thing.
I would agree with that.
Andre Gray is going to be one of the top scorers this season. He'll score more goals than Negredo.
I don't think so. I would like to.
He's doing well for me so far.
Just as a highlight, Wilfred Bonney, £3.5 million in the sum.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know. All right, Brett, I'm curious to get your thoughts about this as we look at the Premier League, as we look at fantasy as a whole. As there's obviously big stars that have come in through the course of the transfer season. Is it worth it to spend the big money on some of these big stars, or do you go for still a lot of those mid-level guys that aren't going to break your bank, and you can kind of spread it out and have a team that's just kind of better overall instead of having one or two huge bright spots?
I would say with the amount of money coming into the Premier League now that lower clubs have the ability to pay bigger fees, and so everyone's price has gone up. So I think you need to have some of the bigger name players. They are what take your team to the next level. Like splashing that much money on Paul Pogba, while outlandish, he's young and a massive player for them. So United for a while had a ton of mid-grade players, and they fell off the summit. So I think they've turned it around, and other teams could do the same where Arsenal has stayed in this fourth range without any big signings. Without Sanchez, they would be farther down than that.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one for sure. Of the deals that happened or didn't happen on deadline day, was there anything that you kind of just sat back as someone that admires and loves the Premier League, and you're like, why? What?
David Luiz.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I was hoping. I didn't want to
assume.
Doubt about it. But I guess I'm confused. I mean, was Chelsea that strapped at defense? I mean,
well, what does he offer you defensively?
Good hair.
Well, sorry, just on saying that, what else was there? You've got to remember, Chelsea went for Chiellini, they went for Barzagli, they went for Romagnoli, AC Milan, they went for Kalidou Koulibaly, they went everywhere for as many central defenders as possible, and I think in the end they just pumped for the devil they know, and I'm just so pleased David Luiz is back, because when he plays, you know that a decent striker is going to run him all over the field. He really is.
Well, at the same time, he's bound to make a highlight a few times this year with an absolute thunderbolt of a goal.
As that's the thing, like it's a risk, but the reward sometimes is even higher than that risk, though, because he is one of those defenders that will get up the field and will put shots on frame.
He will do. He's done it for Brazil. He's done it for Chelsea. He's done it for Paris Saint-Germain. But again, I think he's 2 years older. I don't know if either of you two have seen it, but when he was playing for PSG against Monaco at the weekend, he gave away the most ridiculous. Yeah, it was the most ridiculous penalty in the whole wide world. He hasn't changed the sort of player that he is. Yes, he could run up the other field and score a thunderbolt. But I remember, I think it was Chelsea who were playing Queen's Park Rangers. He gave away a penalty, which he shouldn't have done. He then ran all the way up the other end of the field with the ball, won a penalty himself, said to everybody that he's going to take it, blazed it over the bar, and I don't see why you would do that. I'm really surprised that Chelsea didn't go to Juventus and go, listen, I know Chiellini's 30 years old. Here's 50 million quid. He'll do a job. I mean, John Terry's pushing 60.
Honestly.
Well, I don't know how old John Terry is, but as we said, he needs to be sent to the retirement home.
Send him to MLS. We'll take him for a couple of years and make him a billionaire. That's what we do.
Speaking of MLS, I was expecting Basti to move, but I guess MLS's transfer windows are decent. But I expect him to show up in America anytime now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that, too. We briefly kind of talked about that last week with Schweinsteiger about him possibly going to MLS. Especially, and one of the teams that I would predict him to go to would be the LA Galaxy. They just sold Nigel de Jong over to Galatasaray in Turkey, too. So there's a possibility, although I'm sure Schweinsteiger would demand a DP status, which is a stupid thing that the American leagues do about only having 3 really top-level players. So I don't know how he would fit in. I'm sure he would want to play for either a New York club or an LA club at this point. So we'll see. I feel like he probably will end up over here or go to China for $100 billion or something like that. But
True.
That's just a little ridiculous.
Well, the thing with Schweinsteiger is he has said that he won't play again in Europe. He was named in the Manchester United Premier League squad yesterday in the 25-man squad.
They didn't have to leave anyone out. They don't have enough senior players, so it made sense to have him in the squad.
I think so. You could look at mixed messages, but I don't think he'll go to China. He doesn't seem like the type.
No.
I think he was hoping that maybe Hoffenheim or well, he wouldn't have gone to Leipzig because nobody likes Leipzig in Germany, but one of those lower Bundesliga teams might have come in and said, listen, we'll take you. But the trouble is he was happy to move on a free, but Man United wanted a fee for him. So it swings and roundabouts. We talk about the deadline day. Balotelli left for nothing. A player that cost £16 million 2 years ago that's still in his prime has gone to Nice for absolutely nothing.
Well, I mean, how much did Zlatan cost? And he was a free transfer to Man United as well.
Well, he hasn't cost anything, but he's costing, I think, £12 million is his wages, and he's there for one season, and then he's going to go and play for David Beckham's team, by all accounts.
That's what I've heard, as soon as he ever finds a stupid stadium, which is a whole other Anyway, don't even get me going on that David Beckham United FC BS. It's just so stupid.
I'm more interested in, was it Los Angeles FC or LA United?
LAFC.
Will Ferrell's team?
Yeah, exactly. Will Ferrell, Mia Hamm, Magic Johnson. Have you guys seen the renderings of that stadium? It's going to be gorgeous.
I have, but I was more interested in seeing the renderings of the Chargers' new stadium.
Don't they have a huge lightning bolt or something?
We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about proper football.
Yes, of course. All right, well, Brett, any final thoughts for us at all, sir, before we let you go?
Not too much, just that Simon clearly follows more MLS than I do.
I only follow for Baxter's sake, because otherwise we'd have nothing to talk about.
That's true. That's why.
To be fair, I don't really follow MLS. I really don't. I'm more baseball and NFL in this States. I'm more that than I am MLS. It's still a retirement home.
I just get phone notifications if Sporting Kansas City's winning, and I don't even care if that's happening either.
That's funny. All right,
Baxter. That's one thing. I don't have an MLS team.
That's true. We should.
Well, there you go. Anybody who wants to suggest an MLS team for me to adopt, by all means do so. I haven't got one. I've got a team across every other American-based sport, apart from ice hockey. But if you want me to support your MLS team, submit it. Tweet me, and I will follow them quite happily.
Perfect.
I'll come up with something for you.
Exactly. We'll have to come up with a form or something to figure out exactly who you should support. I like it. Well, thank you, Brett, for joining us. We appreciate it. Where can people find you on social media as well, Brett, for all your latest and greatest soccer insights?
I am on Twitter at Schomstar, so SCHOMMSTAR.
Fantastic. Brett, appreciate you joining us. We are going to run to a break. When we come back, Simon and I have got more in store for you. We'll wrap up the show and talk about all other things soccer-related and maybe figure out an MLS team for Simon, too. Listen to us. It's the Fantasy Soccer Coaches, back after this. Closing things out here on the Fantasy Soccer Coaches, I am Baxter Colburn, joined alongside by Simon Mitchell. Just spoke with our Premier League correspondent Brett Schommer as well, giving us the insights about transfer deadline day and all the other chaos that has taken place in the Premier League this season. Simon does not have a Major League Soccer team, unfortunately, so we're going to have to figure out what to do about that, but it's not that kind of show. We'll figure that out off the air. Or he did say you should tweet at him as well, at Mitch the Coach, if you want to give him an MLS team to support. I don't know. Simon's a little bit older, so he probably could be bought by an LA or a New York team who have lots of money, and he just wants to make a couple million before he officially retires. So I'm assuming you probably don't want to support a team like Columbus or the Revolution or teams like that really just don't do anything anymore.
I think I like a team that's actually just going to give me a little bit of, enjoyment. And I think it's one of the things when you're a kid and you get to choose your football team in the UK, you don't really get a choice. I mean, what happens is my dad told me that I'm going to be a Spurs supporter, and that was it. And I've told my kids exactly the same. And I think this is nice because I've been able to choose my MLB team, the White Sox, my NFL team, the Chargers, as we've mentioned a few occasions. So this is an opportunity for me to kind of go, who's a good MLS team? I probably wouldn't go for New York City because of the Lampard link. I probably wouldn't go for Galaxy because of the Gerrard link. If there's any former Spurs players kicking around the MLS, I'd have a little bit of a weighting that way.
I honestly don't even know if there are any former.
I'll take suggestions. Somebody's already recommended the Portland Timbers to me.
I was going to say, I could see you being a Portland Timbers supporter. Aside from that...
Where's the best place to get food? I mean, if I want to have a proper, good feed. I mean, are we talking like Philadelphia? They got a team because I know they do the Philly cheesesteaks. Yeah,
Philadelphia Union. They have a decent team. But yeah, realistically though, anything on the coast though, you're gonna do well at. I mean, or you could be a supporter of one of the new teams as well, Atlanta, LAFC, or even Minnesota as well too.
Well, we'll take a look. We'll see what happens. We'll see what crops up.
Absolutely, we'll host a separate show all the way just for that. All right, Simon. As we wrap things up on the show this week, the international break is upon us, as we mentioned. So we don't have any games to preview, unfortunately. But next week we will have more excitement to get back to. I do have to ask you: did you see the send off for Robbie Keane for Ireland and his wonder goal that he scored against? I don't even know the country that they were playing.
Well, they were playing Oman.
Is that really a country?
I saw the goal. It was a wonderful thing, and the fact is that he was able to. He retired after the Euros, and Martin O'Neill said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm finished." He said, "No, you need to have a send off.
Yeah,
you need to play. You need to give the fans something, and that's the reason why they had this friendly planned. It was a simple enough game for the Republic of Ireland, and it was good that." The manager, the head coach of Ireland, Martin O'Neill, said, come and have a game, come and score us a goal. I'll bring you off, get you a round of applause. And it was lovely to see, especially from a Spurs point of view. Robbie Keane was stalwart at Tottenham. He was a wonderful player, and got ultimate respect for the guy.
I completely agree. Yeah, even as he played here, of course, in MLS, or he is still technically playing. So I mean, there's a former Spurs guy. He plays for the Galaxy.
Yeah, yeah. And I've just found out that Giovanni Dos Santos as well was kicking around at the Galaxy.
Yep, he also plays for them as well too. So there's a couple of guys just hanging around. I mean, the LA is not a bad team. They're my second favorite team aside from the New England Revolution. So I have to cheer for some team that's going to make the playoff this year, and the Revolution are not going to be that one. That's for sure. We also in American soccer we also have playoffs as well too. We don't have just like a league table. So
that's just wrong.
Yeah.
That's wrong. It's got to be a league table. That's the whole point of it.
Well, we have a community.
You and your playoffs. You Americans, everything's got a playoff.
We like to give everybody a chance, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, look, I finished 6th, but I still won the trophy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, cool, good for you. We have conferences as well too. The East and the West. We don't have. It's weird. I'll explain it to you at some point. Either way, though, Simon, as we wrap things up, final thoughts for our listeners this week.
Yeah, watch the internationals. It's going to be interesting to see England underneath Sam Allardyce, and it's a straight-up qualifier. It's not a friendly, so that'll be an interesting game. Also, just from a fantasy perspective, keep an eye out for injuries, players that pick up knocks here and there. Sometimes it's worth it, especially if you are streaming, dipping players in and dipping players out.
Yes, I completely agree. All right, well, thank you, Simon. A very special thanks to our Premier League correspondent, Brett Schommer, joining us on the program as well. We had Marcelo Taborga on last week to talk about Man United, and now we had Brett Schommer on this week as well, so special thanks to both of them. Thank you to all of you listeners as well, too. A reminder, you can find us on the Sports Podcasting Network. Just go to sportspodcastingnetwork.com. You can also find us on demand on iTunes and on Spreaker.com as well. Thank you to all of you that have been listening so far and supporting us. Please continue to do that as well. We truly appreciate those of you that do that.
Yeah, and as I said, if you want to send us a message on Twitter, I am at Mitch the Coach. He is at Baxter Colburn, and we are TF Soccer Coaches. And if you want to go on a bit more, go on to Gmail. We
Absolutely.
are tfsoccercoaches@gmail.com, and also Facebook, where we're going to get a little bit more active this week, I think, because we've been a little bit slack. I think I'm blaming work, and you're blaming having a baby sooner rather than later as well. So
Yes.
We'll get there eventually.
Yes, yep, absolutely. We've got a lot of different things moving around that we hope to be a little bit more active on, because we appreciate all of you guys with all your love that you've given us as well too. So stay tuned for that for sure. So he's Simon Mitchell. I'm Baxter Colburn. Thank you so much for listening to the Fantasy Soccer Coaches. Enjoy the international break, and we'll see you next time on the Fantasy Soccer Coaches.